So tonight's Love Island was quite dramatic, considering yesterday was pretty boring. But yesterday Josh from season 1 returned, and he had to pick 3 girls to go on a date with. So he picked Georgia S, Georgia H and Hannah. And I only found out yesterday that Georgia H is the girl who Bear released a video of, and that's why he went to jail. I knew what he had done, but I'd never looked up who it was, and even if I did, I wouldn't have known who it was anyway. So the 3 girls seemed quite happy to see him, but what was actually hilarious to me is that Georgia H was like, oh my god, right, and she's talking about when they were seeing each other and then they went to Ibiza or whatever, and then he like totally ditched her in a club, and she's like, oh, it's really good to see you, blah blah blah. Now after speaking to him for approximately 3 minutes, it was like, oh, you seem really mature now. And then the night they were talking about it, and apparently all that thing happened with the nightclub like 6 months ago. And I'm like, what is it with these girls thinking that these men are so mature? And then once he went into the villa, he was sitting talking to the girls, and he was going, oh, these guys, they've got no game, they're acting like virgins. And I'm sitting thinking, is that maturity? Is that what maturity looks like? These women have obviously never been with a mature man, and they're so obsessed. Like every single episode, they're like, oh, we need a man, not a boy. Right, okay, well, you're on the wrong show. Last night, I felt as if Mitch and Lewis were trying to get fired into absolutely anything that moved. And then, obviously, that all came to a head tonight, because Mitch has been talking to different girls, but he told Demi that she was his number 1. And she was like, oh, you can prove and you can graft for me. And he's like, I am willing to graft for you. 2 seconds later, she's up on the terrace with Lewis kissing him, after he had just told Kaz that he was interested in her. It's bad enough to do these things behind people's backs, right? And I know that that's what the show's all about, but they've just got a total brass neck. Like, they do not give a fuck about anybody. And it doesn't make any sense to me how they can just, like, be interested in so many people at once. So after Demi and Lewis kissed, Demi came down into the dressing room, and she was, like, fixing her face, and Kaz was sitting, and she seen Lewis pass, so she knew what had happened. So then, obviously, just before they had to choose their partners, Mitch was sitting with Liberty, and he was like, oh, have they just kissed? Like, making things pure awkward for Liberty, right? I felt so bad for her. And then they had to pick their partners. So Josh picked Georgia H, who Anton wanted to go with. So Anton's just like, shit, who the fuck's going to pick me now? So when Kaz stood up to pick, she chose Lewis, even though she knew that Lewis and Demi had just kissed. And she stood up, right, and she was like, oh, fuck it, because she knew what had happened, but she thought, right, I'm going to go for what I want anyway, right? So Mitch was like, oh, that's my girl, that's my girl. Genuinely, I don't think he did anything wrong. He was just cheering her on, as if, like, right, go for what you want. Even though he wanted Demi to pick him, right, we know that. But at the same time, he was giving her some words of encouragement, and obviously Lewis didn't like that. So after they had all been picked, Lewis was a complete fucking dick, right? And he went off his head at Mitch. And then Mitch was like, oh, I don't really think I did anything wrong, because he was saying to Kaz, I just picked Lewis anyway, right? Now, we know that it's because he wanted to go with Demi, but the way Lewis was acting was out of order, right? Like, if I was in that house and somebody approached me in such a violent way, I'd get them chucked out the house, right? I don't care what the reason is. It was just being violent for no reason. Then when Mitch was talking to Chris, he says, oh, Lewis was just acting like a dickhead. And Chris said, oh, you do know that if you say that to him, he's just going to go off and win again. And what? Do you know what I mean? If I thought that somebody was going to go off their head at me for being honest with him and saying, you acted like a dickhead there, and I knew that they were going to be aggressive, that is the first thing I would say. I'd say, do you know what? I think that you're a bit of a cunt and you need to fucking calm yourself. When Molly stood up to pick, I thought that she was going to pick Chris, right, even though she's been in 2 minds and she's kind of been like, oh, I don't know if I felt a spark with Chris or whatever. But after she spoke to Callum the way she did the other night, when he says, are you still attracted to me or whatever, and she laughed in his face and she brought him down to that, like she literally was just fucking slagging him for everything, and then she still picked him, and then he was still happy to go with her. I was like, that is dysfunctional. Liberty chose Mitch, even though he's been treating her like an absolute dick. And I don't know what it is about Mitch, right, but I really like him. And I know that he acts like a dick, and I know that he plants seeds in people's minds and he makes everybody think that he likes them. but I genuinely just don't think that he even knows what he wants. And then Hannah chose Anton just to be nice, and even though there is things about Hannah that I greatly dislike and don't understand, her fashion sense is a 10 out of 10. Apart from that catsuit thing that she was wearing the night, because it was like a see-through brown colour. I only don't like it because I don't like neutral colours. But her fashion sense is a 10 out of 10. And I genuinely think that she's a really nice person. She gives people advice. She seems like a really caring, genuine person. And it was funny when she was giving Anton advice on how to flirt, because she's actually been single for years. And she's not flirted with one person in the house because apparently they're not on her level. But she's trying to give him flirting advice, and it was actually quite funny. So the situation with Georgia S and Toby is completely confusing to me. She picked him because she says, oh, I think he's really mature. Once again, they're obsessed with having these mature men. And then he pulled Molly. I was actually shocked when he pulled Molly, right, for a chat, because he hadn't seemed interested in Molly. I think everybody in that house fancies Molly at this point. But then he took Georgia S to the side and he was like, oh, I'm going to have chats with people. And she was fucking raging, right? Like, I kind of get her side. I get where she's coming from, because she obviously likes Toby and he's pulling somebody else for a chat. But at the same time, the two of them said that they were open. So she's obviously not open. So I was getting where he was coming from, right? But at the same time, she was just like, obviously hot, and she was just cutting off the conversation, which I completely understand. And to be honest, she's way too good for him. I can't stand him. I can't stand lad mentality. And the fact that he even thinks that he's good enough for Molly either is insane to me. Like, I don't like one thing about him. So Chris and Demi ended up paired up again, which was completely bizarre to me, because so many people wanted to go with him at the start. Then she expressed that she liked him. Then when they get paired up, it was instantly like, no, we're not meant to be paired up. And then Chris was putting his all into Molly, and he was saying that he doesn't normally open himself up, and then he did, and then he got hurt. And I actually felt so sorry for him, right? Because he'd put all his eggs in one basket, unlike the rest of the fucking cunts in that house, who'll just try and chat up anybody. And then she just wasn't interested. But tonight was so dramatic. But I just don't understand when people go nuts, like the way Lewis went absolutely nuts, right? Okay, Mitch was doing something that annoyed him, but his aggression was a total red flag, right? No wonder Kaz turned around to Demi and says, oh, the two of yous can crack on. Because if I was with somebody who had aggression problems like that, I'd be like that, do you know what? You can sleep outside or whatever, because I'm not going to lie next to somebody who thinks that they're a hard man, or who thinks that they're a lad, or who's going to take out their frustrations on somebody else. He was just annoyed because he didn't get paired up with Demi, and he's an absolute fucking dick. Like, honestly, Mitch should have just punched him, but then he ended up getting chucked out the house. And I don't think that Mitch was in the wrong in that situation, but Lewis is an absolute fucking dickhead. So there's a new bombshell coming in on Sunday. For the life of me, I can't remember her name, but I'm pretty sure I watched her season. But let me know in the comments, what do you think of the drama? What do you think of Lewis? Do you think he was right to go off his head at Mitch like that? I totally don't. Like, there's no need for that attitude. Let me know what you think.